Hi guys, my name is Nikki. I'm one of the dietitians here at Leno, and today I wanted to discuss a topic I like to go over in pretty much all of my first consultations with my GLP-1 users, and that is the topic of protein. So I want to make it as simple as possible in this lecture, go over everything I typically would with a client, knowing how much of it to eat, some sources that are GLP-1 friendly, how to pick out a supplement, and how to build your meals that are protein rich. But first of all, I want to discuss some of the craze that I've seen around protein. You might have seen it before online when you go to the grocery store. There's protein in everything right now, so I want to cut to the chase. How much of it do we really need, and do we need to be incorporating it into every meal that we consume? So let's get into some basic science, understanding protein, why it's important, what it does in our body. It's really important building block for our entire body. Actually, it does more than just structural for our muscles, skin, hair, and nails. It's required for our immune system, enzymes, hormones. They're all made out of protein. It is required for repair and growth of muscle mass. So very important during weight loss, especially on GLP-1s that will suppress your appetite and increase your risk of muscle mass loss. And of course, protein keeps your metabolism running, so it supports that lean muscle, stabilizes your blood sugar, and helps you stay fuller for longer. I want to get into also the structure of protein just so that you can make some informed decisions when you go to the grocery store, knowing that there are 4 structures to protein. The shape of the structure determines its job, so certain enzymes have certain shapes. When you eat protein, you actually eat it in pretty complex forms when they are whole foods like chicken or fish, versus when you eat maybe some protein supplements, they will be in a little bit more simpler form, like its tertiary form or even down to its primary structure when you see branch chain amino acid protein supplements. These whole food proteins that are tightly folded structures do take longer to break down, so that's something really important to note because it gives you a slow and steady release of amino acids and that better feeling of fullness. And yeah, like I said, protein powders are partially broken down. Really important for GLP-1 users that have low appetite and get that feeling of fullness really quickly. They might need a more simpler form of protein. So both have their use case. Maybe you're early on in your journey, you still don't get full super quickly, but you need that feeling of fullness. And also into maintenance, then these complex structures of protein with whole foods would be really important versus that feeling of fullness that you get super quickly after a few bites, but you still need to reach your protein goals. These more simpler structures will be really important and something that you can get from protein powders. Lastly, I want to go over some absorption tips and knowledge. So protein is broken down in the stomach and in the small intestine into small amino acids and small peptides, and your gut absorbs that into your bloodstream. So that's kind of what you see down here. And these amino acids are the simplest form of protein that we break down. And this is used in your body as sort of like raw material to build up muscle, make hormones, repair tissues, and keep your metabolism stable. GLP-1 slows down digestion, so protein gets absorbed a lot slower in this case, and your total intake matters more than the size of your meal. So making sure that you're still hitting a certain gram of protein per meal, even though that is smaller. So how much protein do we really need now that we know that it's in everything? It's kind of being thrown in our face, a little bit of the basic science. How much of this stuff do we really need to get? So that really depends on your activity level, how much you're training. Maybe you're not training at all. So let's say you're in the middle, training about 2 to 3 times a week, exercising, muscle mass training, making sure that you're trying to build muscle mass rather than just preserve. I would put you in the higher range of aiming for 1.2 to 1.4 grams per. Now you want to keep this in mind, it's per kilogram rather than pound. So I know in the US we use pounds, so you want to take however many pounds you are, let's say you're 200, you want to divide that by 2.2 to get your kilograms. That would put you at 91 kilograms, and then that'll put you around 120, 130 grams of protein per day. So you're probably asking, how do I hit this crazy number, 130 grams, with a low appetite? I want to make this a little bit simpler. So first things first, you want to prioritize protein in every meal. I know, like I said, it's kind of being thrown in your face, but you want to just make sure it's at every meal. Maybe in the morning you have eggs every morning, you have Greek yogurt every morning. For lunch, you incorporate some source of protein with your salad. It doesn't need to be the entirety of the meal, but it needs to be a priority. I like to help people just make sure that they're supplementing with a few sources of protein. Use Greek yogurt drinks, use shakes, use Fairlife milk, whatever you can to try to get that. I know that meals might be a little bit harder to eat, so the liquid form really does help. Trying smaller and more frequent meals I found to also help. So instead of having one big lunch, maybe you split it up into two more snack items like that are high protein, maybe some edamame, and then a little bit later you have like a turkey wrap, and then add protein in everything that you're kind of already eating. So let's say you're making soup tonight for dinner. Can you add some collagen to that? Maybe using Greek yogurt instead of sour cream in certain recipes. And then, like I said, a simple protein rule. Just make sure that it's in every meal, making sure that there's a source of protein every time you eat. Obviously, if it is like a dessert or a snack and chips and cookie, like I said before, you don't need protein there. So here's an example day. If your appetite is extremely low, this is probably the extreme case. I'm not going to make my clients on these days reach for the 130 grams, but I want to make sure that they're not just getting 10 grams. And if you don't feel like this yet, maybe you want to prepare for this day. Maybe you're afraid of going up on dosage and you've heard of the side effects and you're worried about your appetite intake. I want to help you prepare for this. Maybe you're dealing with this right now, so you can stay informed. So in the morning, I would start with some warm ginger tea. That is shown to really help with the nausea and the morning nausea in the morning. And then I would add some collagen, like I said, in that coffee. So adding protein wherever you can on the days, especially when it's the hardest. And then maybe a few hours later, you do a Greek yogurt, you do a Fairlife shake, maybe you do a liquid form of protein if you can't eat anything solid, if you're feeling too weak there. And then for lunch, doing a small piece of salmon, baked salmon, maybe some scrambled eggs with some cheese, maybe a cottage cheese dip. With the salmon, you can add some smashed potatoes, anything that'll just add a little bit of carbs there. And then for afternoon, you do another snack item, so maybe a few bites of edamame. And then for dinner, maybe you make a soup, some chicken noodle soup. It could be protein packed with some bone broth. And then for bed, before bed, you have a few sips of maybe some protein milk or a shake. And that alone should get you about 70 to 80 grams of protein without ever eating a full meal. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the 130, especially you're probably not going to be training on this day, but just to preserve your muscle mass, these are some things to keep in mind. So let's talk about protein supplementation if this is something that you want to do. Like I said, very important when appetite starts getting really suppressed and you can't have these huge complex forms of protein, but you still need a supplement on them. What is a complete versus an incomplete protein? So complete proteins are going to be kind of the ones you see quite often. So like whey isolate, soy protein, egg protein, casein. They just make sure that you have the amino acids that your body cannot make. So it pretty much takes care of it for you. Now, branch chain amino acids, I just wanted to touch on that here versus like something like a whey isolate. Which one should you do? It's called branch chain because it's key for muscle repair, stimulating muscle protein synthesis, preventing muscle loss during calorie deficits. You don't really need a branch chain amino acid supplement if your protein already contains a complete protein. So whey isolate in this case will get the job done for you. Now, collagen is a structural protein found in hair, skin, nails, joints, connective tissue. It is an incomplete protein. It's missing some of the amino acids that are essential in our body. So it is more of a supplement on top of the complete proteins that you're already getting in the day. But a nice thing to add, like I said, to soups, maybe coffee. It helps with skin elasticity, which I know a lot of us are worried about as we age. And it's good as an add-on, not a replacement, like I said. So something to look for to make sure you're getting a quality protein supplement is making sure that it's third-party tested. So no heavy metals. And here are some stamps to maybe look for on the protein. Maybe you have one in your home that you want to double check, or when you're at a grocery store, some of the stamps to look for. These are outside vendors that do third-party testing outside of the FDA. And so making sure it's a whey isolate, not a concentrate, that's easier to digest. You get higher protein per scoop, so very important on GLP-1s, making sure you get 20 to 25 grams of protein per serving. There's minimal added sugars, making sure there's not tons of artificial sweetener if you're sensitive to that, and that the tolerance liquid options are usually better than the bars for protein as well. And if you found that helpful and you want some more personalized guidance while on GLP-1s, really highly encourage you to explore Leno Health and what we're doing out here.